The technology side, Andrew, has been interesting because I think, like what you mentioned, I think there's been definitely sort of greater adoption of technology over the last, I don't know, few years.
Yeah.
I think pre-COVID, people were saying that, you know, the average company uses about 60 different bits of technology in terms of even just from a SaaS software perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And I can only see that as having increased, right? Over the, you know, obviously the last 18 months or so.
Exactly.
I mean, to the point now where, you know, when we're kind of budgeting for software from our side and from a technology budget, those budgets always kind of seem out of sync. And even if we include a buffer for the following year, we always seem to exceed it, purely because obviously, you know, technology is an evolving thing. It's, you know, there's new technology, there's new opportunities, there's new ways of becoming more efficient, perhaps. And I think that's a kind of key driver for us to perhaps not wait until the next financial year, but to say, well, actually, let's take advantage of this this piece of tech now. I mean, for example, last night I was working with one of our partners on an RFP submission, and I said it'd be really cool if there's a piece of technology that just does this bit. And it was, and we made the decision in less than a minute, right? And it was literally okay, let's buy this. This instantly improves what we were trying to do, and I think that's really, you know, kind of key. I think just being able to kind of do things on the fly, you know, with what's kind of available. But I think today's show is really about efficiencies, and I think it's really about, okay, how do you kind of use this technology to you know, scale your business, but how do you do it at a more granular level, right? You know, what are the kind of key tools that businesses kind of need to use? Some I'm sure they know about, some I'm sure they've heard us talk about, but there's a whole host of things that perhaps they've never heard of. And I think if we do a good job today, I think, you know, it will really kind of educate people in terms of how some of those kind of pieces of the jigsaw will kind of come together to solve quite a big puzzle for companies.
Yeah, I think interestingly, from a tech perspective or a technology stack perspective, especially in that app space or the, as you said, SaaS space, I think now, because most of our daily lives are touched by, you know, perhaps like a vaccination passport or an app that allows us to gain certain entry and access. This is kind of being rolled out. You know, usually when you adopt tech in your home life, that kind of overspills to kind of work life as well. So I think, and obviously with a lot of people working from home, they've kind of brought that into their space as well, and just from that communications perspective. So yeah, we've got a lot to run through today, guys. So just before we kind of touch on that, we always like to give a quick 5 minutes on anything of interest that we've kind of looked at in the last couple of weeks. I guess the one in line with this is something kind of tech in an unusual space. So obviously in this part of the world, you know, we're kind of birthplace of Islam. We've got, you know, in Saudi Arabia, the two lots of you know, kind of religious ceremonies that go through for Hajj and Umrah. And obviously with, you know, you're talking about millions of people in one place at a time. And the Saudi authorities have kind of really embraced technology to kind of make the experience safe for worshippers, right? Which I think is pretty cool. So one of the things that they've done is they've not only kind of used applications to stage time for people to effectively kind of worship safely, but they've also kind of got things like sanitization robots. So these kind of robots whiz around and sanitize different spaces and the floor and everything. Plus they've got drones delivering water. So kind of giving out water to pilgrims as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Like, you know, just kind of, and to register, you obviously have to go through an application. You have to, whereas previous, obviously, you know, it's pretty much rock up and go for it, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anything that caught your eye this week?
Yeah, not quite as kind of fun and helpful as yours, but just something that I've been kind of reading up on quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. But obviously we know that there's a logistics issue that's kind of going on globally at the moment. This is forcing prices to go up. We've seen obviously what's going on with oil prices. But I think we're at this very kind of critical stage where just it's something to keep an eye on as we kind of plan and forecast for 2022. So I think the global kind of debt now amongst sort of governments, companies, banks, is approaching $300 trillion. Okay, so which is
half of Elon Musk's net worth, I think.
Yeah, possibly. Well, no, yeah, maybe less now because the shares are
Shares
dropped,
right?
But we're talking about it's like a significant sum of money that I just don't think is kind of comprehensible for most of us, right? No. It's like it's an insane amount of money. I think I heard someone talk about it, saying, look, if we just gave out $1 per second, how many years would it take to get to 300 trillion?
Right, go on.
And it's about 35,000 years, basically. And then that's a kind of sum we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of gets lost now because companies are valued at 2 trillion and stuff like that. Yeah. But this is an insane amount of money. And then I think just the challenge with that is obviously inflation now is seemingly kind of increasing, which potentially now will impact interest rates. Yeah. And again, so when companies potentially, and governments have debt burdens, we're in that kind of interesting, I'd say, next phase where, the whole kind of world is almost on a rebound from the impact of COVID. But actually, how does that really kind of impact us, with this kind of hanging over us now, which is interesting to see what governments can do. They can't, I think on the back of COVID, no government can really, or no country can really afford to go into a deep recession.
No.
Right. I think, so is it more sort of, printing of money and stuff like that? But I think it's just interesting for businesses as we plan ahead. But yeah, just thought I'd kind of, add some skepticism.
Bring the mood down.
Yeah, doom and gloom into the conversation first thing in the morning.
Fair enough. Well, let me bring it back up then. So there's the other story, last story I wanted to kind of touch upon was we spoke about this a few months ago now, which was kind of real time commerce, right? So back in the day, the shopping channels, we kind of had that cheesy kind of presenter showcasing different types of products. This is kind of moved into kind of the space that we're at now as far as live streaming. And they were talking about in China specifically around like live commerce, live e-commerce, live stream buying, and it just kind of blew me away, this number. So there's a streamer that recently broke the kind of daily sales record. It wasn't even a day, but they managed to generate $1.8 billion worth of sales through this kind of live commerce channel in 12 hours. And they were talking about how some of the kind of influencers have evolved. So one of the most popular influencers now has a staff of 1,500 people that he trains up to kind of showcase the products on live stream, and has this kind of streaming environment. It just kind of, it blew me away. Just kind of, that live stream piece is, you see it a lot now, right? So on TikTok and Instagram, and how kind of influencers and organizations, like that live element. But then kind of to plug that into sales as well is insane. Just so someone's buying something somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it, right? You're just drawing that line sort of closer, and it's becoming a little bit more firmer now in terms of activity and sales, right?
Yeah.
Which is really kind of like the holy grail for
totally
everything that we do, right? From a marketing and sales perspective, the ability to just draw that straight line changes everything. Right?
Very true.
So super interesting. Shall we crack on? I think there's just so much to cover today.
We've got a whole bunch to go through.
Okay, cool. So look, I think when we were kind of planning the show today, guys, we kind of looked at this and said, okay, we're talking about tech stacks, and people don't really tend to talk about tech stacks over here locally. We have very few conversations related to that. But like I mentioned from the start, I think it becomes sort of increasingly important for companies to really kind of understand what kind of tech stack they need, what's even out there, right? I mean, I think we're very privileged that we're in the industry that we are, where we kind of see things maybe before others do. We get invitations to kind of trial beta products, and then we get things kind of heavily discounted at times. But the point is actually all of that technology that we use is really kind of applicable for most businesses. Right. It's just we get to play around with it first.
I think also we get to play around with it first because we get out of this place quite a lot. So, I mean, a lot of the tech that we use, we kind of first came across it in the States, right? You know, where you're kind of having conversations with other business owners and kind of other companies, and they're like, oh, what do you use for this? And it's like, oh, we use this. I mean, Slack, namely one, right? I mean, I think when we were kind of talking about Slack, no one had a clue what it was, right? People were still using that old Microsoft Teams one. What was it called? Yammer, right? I think that was kind of one of the ones that was there. So yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be good to just kind of almost start from the basics very, very kind of quickly, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was funny. I was telling my wife the other day. I was like, we're talking about tech stacks on the Grow Show. And she's like, okay, cool. What's a tech stack?
Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, look, you know, it's funny. And I kind of went back and looked at the roots of the tech stack, and we started talking about this years ago, but mainly more for the development arm of our business, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of, you know, the design and development,
Yeah.
maybe mobile apps or
Web,
websites,
etc.,
or whatever
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, the guys would be saying, right, this is the tech stack that we need to use. It could be programming languages, design tools, you know, and all of that kind of stuff, you know, all the things that plug into a website.
Yeah.
But obviously it's kind of evolved. And I think the way we use the term tech stacks today is much more kind of, I don't know, much more prevalent in terms of, you know, the importance of a tech stack in the business itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not talking about marketing and sales and you know, all of those different ingredients. We're talking about, you know, we're talking about kind of everything, right? From an overall perspective and how these tools really kind of impact specific parts of the business.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought what would be good is to maybe understand why we should be talking about this first and foremost, and then we'll go into all the different areas where technology and new products and software and stuff like that can really have an impact. So I'll throw it back at you because I like doing that. So why do companies need a tech stack first and foremost?
Look, I think so I think if we just take a couple of steps back as far as, you know, why would they need it now? I think, you know, with the fact that we've got definitely this hybrid work model where people are working remotely more often and there's not so much kind of face-to-face contact. I think that, you know, this is where, from a collaboration perspective, from an efficiency perspective, this is kind of where tech can help, right? And obviously we'll jump into kind of some of those specifics when it comes to that. I also think that obviously we talk about data a lot. You know, out there in the market, we had that event yesterday, we were focusing heavily on the data, but the data that you collect internally as well from your own organization is just as important as the data that you collect, you know, for your clients, right? So understanding, you know, from that efficiency perspective, how your team is operating, how they're communicating, what's the positive or negative impacts on the back of that. I think some, you know, just that monitoring and tracking, but in a kind of positive sense, right? So we're not talking about, you know, kind of clocking time necessarily, but when we're looking at that, ultimately we're trying to work out where we can kind of, you know, look at making things more efficient, right? So I think those are, for me, those are some of the kind of key things that we look at.
Yes, I think you touched on a few things: the data, that kind of collaborative piece, accountability, I guess. Those things. I think there's a couple of things I kind of look at as really important, and I think it's for every business has inefficiencies. Right? No matter what business it is, there's always something that takes maybe a little bit too long. And that could be because it's got to go through, you know, a process, or it's got to go through a department, and people are busy. You know, and how much time do businesses lose because of some of those inefficiencies?
A lot.
Right? And then when we look at how much time they lose, it's like, okay, well, what opportunities are they losing by alongside that? And if they're losing opportunities, how much revenue are they leaving on the table by basically not being able to action something? And for me, I think when I look at the technology that we've invested in, I think a lot of that comes down to actually, does it speed up what we're trying to do? Okay. I think speed is just so key. And then we've got the other aspects, which I think are equally important, which is utilization of the cloud, right? You know, remember the pain of migrating from one laptop to another, or losing your phone, and you know, just that cloud piece means that actually, you know, I had my laptop stolen in New York.
Yeah.
18 months ago.
I forgot about that.
Right? 2 years ago, just before a big presentation.
That's right, yeah.
Wasn't bothered because everything was on the cloud, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, I was bothered. I was really annoyed.
But I've since remember being a bit unhappy.
Yeah, but it was as simple as get a new laptop,
yeah,
connect to my account, and so all of a sudden I've got ultimately the same content again.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's so there's those aspects where, you know, we just worry less about certain things, but also, like I said, it's removing those inefficiencies. So I thought what would be quite cool is if we kind of break down a few different areas of business, right, from an operational perspective and from a commercial perspective. Let's look at some of the tools that people should be using. And I know a lot of these tools people have heard of. I don't think we need to go into huge amounts of detail on them. The only kind of spoiler I'd say is there's a few names that just pop up again and again and again. And for me, when you see that and you know, pieces of kit, tools, software, whatever you want to call it, if these serve multiple purposes, then that by default increases efficiency, right? Because you're not having to jump across
different
so many
platforms.
different platforms.
Exactly.
And that's it. Really kind of simple. So we'll talk about kind of some of those ones, but I think let's start. So if we look at it from a communications perspective first and foremost, because no business kind of survives without communication. Let's break that down in terms of internal and external. Same tools, different tools. What do we use?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about it. I think we were definitely one of the first company that I know in this region that was introduced Slack, right? So for kind of internal communication, made that transition from, you know, removing email as a mechanism to communicate internally. So that was, I think, definitely one of the first companies that did that, that I'm aware of. And then just obviously speaking about it to other organizations over time. So I think using Slack for that internal communication, and obviously, you know, collaboration as well. So, you know, the way Slack works, as we know, is through channels and direct message. So just, I think, having that visibility in one place, without having to CC everyone on emails and try to go through a search on inbox and this kind of thing. I think that obviously sits there. I mean, what we also see, you know, here is Teams. So a lot of people kind of live and die by Teams. I mean, especially now with kind of meetings, any organization that we work with that has Teams, we usually get jumped on their team network, and then obviously we can collaborate directly with the client as well. So I think, and anyone that's on Teams, they kind of have those little bell, and it's almost like Pavlov's dog, you know, it's kind of a bell rings and I've got a meeting, or a bell rings and that. So I think depending on, you know, if you're in a Google space or you're in a Microsoft space, you kind of tend to bounce between those. And then ultimately, you know, we also leverage Zoom heavily as well. So Zoom is the kind of choice of communication for us. I think at times we use Google Meet as well. And obviously other organizations use that, but it definitely seems that it's either you're on a Teams call or a Zoom call. That's pretty much kind of where it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think Google a little bit sort of too late to the game in terms of introducing Meet. It's okay, but I don't think it's maybe as strong. But that said, you know, when we talk about external comms, I think Slack is now, like I said, being used with clients.
Exactly.
Right. So we're covering now internal and external comms using the same platforms, which again helps. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
And I think it's making sure that you can integrate as many of these as possible. So, for example, we integrate Slack with Zoom.
Yeah, right? And Zoom with calendars.
Yeah.
So Zoom with HubSpot.
Right. So the whole kind of piece there is, you know, these aren't kind of independently sitting there. We try to connect as many of these as possible.
Exactly.
Which I think is a key part of this.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I speak to companies all the time that still don't use Teams from a messaging perspective,
right?
Nor Slack,
right?
And it blows my mind. I don't understand how they do it, because the second I say, look, I was getting maybe copied into, I don't know, 200 unnecessarily internal emails a day, right? Just because people wanted to show that they were working, but I was just copied into useless rubbish, right? It was like, I don't need to know about this, and Slack just really kind of saved that. So now I get hundreds of spam emails instead, but it's fine. But the point is, you know, from a kind of work efficiency perspective, saves time, has streamlined how I kind of manage many parts of my day, right? It's a time saver. I think the other thing which I think is interesting, and I think we have spoken about this in the last few weeks, is WhatsApp.
Yep.
Right. And I think I think the groups on WhatsApp is such a good feature. And really what we're trying to do is, and a lot of companies have that sort of accountability element where we've got to track every every conversation that's being had. We've got, that sort of governance that's going on. However, clients love using WhatsApp.
Yeah,
right? And so we're seeing that more and more where clients are saying, look, if we can set up a WhatsApp group, if something comes, to mind, I don't have to then draft an email, copy the right people in. Let's just create a group. Let me just share my ideas, share a voice note if I'm, perhaps driving or whatever, right? And I just want to kind of get that out. And I think that's kind of really important as well in terms of mentioning the kind of corporate use. And we've spoken about WhatsApp in terms of like certain markets just don't get it still.
No, true. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a higher adoption rate in the States now. That was always the one that you'd say, can we WhatsApp? And they'd be like, what's WhatsApp? So it seems obviously now it's part of that ecosystem and it's being pushed out from a HubSpot, from a Facebook Meta perspective. It seems as though that's there. I'd say also as well, WhatsApp, in a lot of cases, and we'll get to it when it comes to kind of collaboration, in project management, people use WhatsApp for that, which kind of blows me away. But, actually there's companies that we know that use WhatsApp for internal communication instead of Slack.
Sure.
So I think, there's people using possibly technology, not necessarily for the right reasons as well, right?
No, true. Cool. So let's move over on the marketing piece, because I think this is really kind of like interesting in the sense of some of those efficiencies that we were talking about. Yeah. And a big one is if we're launching any kind of marketing campaign, any kind of marketing initiative, typically we need design of some form, right? And I think I was the most excited person in the world when I heard Guy Kawasaki at South by Southwest many years ago.
Yeah.
And he was on stage saying, "I'm launching I'm investing in something called Canva, and it's phenomenal, and it's going to change the way people design." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. But what if I'm not a designer? Even better." And I was like, "Okay, now I'm interested," because I mean, even today, where most of it, I've been copied into two Slack messages today, or tagged into two Slack messages today, where we've got. We've not got enough design team, and even though we've got a whole army of designers, there's just a whole lot of client work that obviously gets priority, which means that some of the design work that I want to get done goes kind of further down the list. And so Canva is that tool, which I think again is one of those huge time savers, where anyone who's a non-designer can basically use Photoshop, right, and produce Photoshop quality work. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Right, and it's drag and drop. It's so intuitive, super easy, template based. But in the space of 5 minutes, you can produce something that looks really good. Or even I think once we couldn't get design time for an ebook for 3 or 4 weeks, and so we created the whole ebook in Canva, right, in 2 days. And so again, getting out to market for time sensitive stuff. That tool is just phenomenal.
Yeah. There's another one as well that's kind of chasing at the heels at the moment called PicMonkey, but I think Canva is definitely the kind of trailblazer, right? And I think also Canva is one of those ones that can only be used from that perspective, but they have templates for websites now. There are templates for social media posts. I mean, it's huge. I mean, that they've got a whole presentation piece now, right, in their animation, video. I mean, it's on fire.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I mean, we run internal presentations as part of our kind of weekly company-wide meetings, and I'd say probably 70 or 80% of the presentations
using Canva,
in the last few months have all been in Canva. Whereas naturally that would have been a PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever it is, where people are now going straight to Canva and saying, actually, I can run my presentations from here. So I think that's a super exciting company, super cheap. I mean, I think for $7 a month, you've got access to all of this, which is again, it's worth maybe a minute of our time, right? In terms of that. From an actual campaign, so you've got your creatives, from campaigns perspective, I think this is, from a tech perspective, this is nothing new, but the self-serve platforms from, say, Google and Facebook and those guys. Super easy for people to use to kind of roll out campaigns. But again, traditionally that would maybe have gone to agencies, right? So again, there's definitely a shift in dynamic, reduces costs, saves time.
I mean, especially, I remember when Snap launched their platform, there was only 6 agencies globally that could work on it, right? And then Twitter, it was the same kind of thing, whereas something like a TikTok went straight to kind of, independent businesses straight, very fast. That kind of wanted to give people the opportunity to self-provision, as it were.
Yeah. There's other platforms as well that allow you to build campaigns, launch campaigns, track campaigns. HubSpot is one. That's a name that's going to probably keep coming up today.
Yeah.
But again, if you wanted to kind of integrate even Canva, so your Canva designs can be fully integrated into HubSpot, which is a really nice feature, and then used in campaigns that you create on the same platform, which is quite cool. Email marketing, Andrew?
Yeah, email marketing piece. I mean, obviously out there, again, the HubSpot word is going to come up quite frequently today. Sorry, excuse me. But basically, that has that kind of full suite in that space. I mean, we have MailChimp as well. That kind of is really one of the ones that kind of stood the test of time. So kind of even large organizations will use MailChimp to kind of send out their email communications.
Do you know if they've just been acquired? Yeah?
No, really, who bought them?
I think it's QuickBooks, randomly.
QuickBooks, the accountancy guys. Interesting. For delivering invoices and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, it's just they see it as now, but it's quite interesting how those kinds of businesses are now thinking along the same lines of, okay, we maybe this is a customer base that we need to tap into and things like that.
Well, I think we saw the acquisition of Slack from Salesforce, right? And because they had that missing component, they saw that. So I mean, some of the only other ones that have kind of popped up is Constant Contact. That's another one that kind of seems quite popular. The other ones out there at the moment that kind of service large databases, I'm not going to mention because everyone moans about them. So every single client that we go into says there's a few that basically, this is horrible though. I can't do anything with it. I can't track. I can't do this. So I think those are the ones that kind of that we would look at, and then kind of moving into that web space. This interests me massively because I kind of I jumped on the Wix bandwagon. I think during when COVID was full lockdown, I was getting kind of tired of Zoom meetings, and it kind of there was a lot going on, and I just wanted to do something completely different. So I built out a couple of websites, and I was quite scared how easy it was. I think that's a good word to build out web. And then looked at Squarespace. We could build out over kind of an application over an application, for example, like build a website and an application under 2 minutes. This
is huge. I mean, for web, again, let's go back a few years. You want to build a website, you need a developer, right? If you're not technical, even if people say, use a WordPress template, you've still got to customize it. You've still got to get things right. You can't do it, right? Unless you know something about CSS and stuff like that. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
These sites change all of that. So Wix is a great product, and works really well. Squarespace, as you mentioned, is similar. But the new players to this now, Shopify to an extent, where again, like you need to build an e-commerce store. Actually, you can do it in a day now, right? And these things are just massive game changers because normal website project 2, 3, 4 months, right? Depending on maybe a sizable project.
Exactly.
Now we're talking 2, 3, 4 days, right? And then imagine the impact for businesses on that. So look, I think that technology is cool. HubSpot again now, I think with the launch of Starter CMS, which I think is an absolute game changer. Because all of these ones that we're speaking about now are very kind of isolated in terms of if your website, go to Wix or Squarespace or Shopify. But if you want a marketing machine that also allows you to build a website, then HubSpot's whatever, $40 a month or whatever it is,
$5,
which includes enterprise level hosting. It's just unreal in terms of value that you get for that. But these are genuinely ones that you can just pick a template and start to customize, and you don't need any technical skills, but you're talking about building 20-page websites in a day or two, right? which I think is just such a significant kind of development for the industry. But linked to that, Andrew, is landing pages, right? Because I think that's one that people always have an issue with, because they've got a website and it's been very IT heavy. Actually, in my notes, that was one of the things I wanted to mention. It's like, okay, you know, a lot of the things that we're talking about here is almost removing the influence of IT within all of these kinds of things. Honestly, like, you know, when you start to kind of look at this, but again, like, you know, your website, you want to kind of, you know, make a change on a website, you want to add a new service on a website, you want to add a new landing page, you've got to go to IT. And IT will say, well, okay, well, hold on, but we've got, you know, 100 other internal projects and this stuff doesn't sound so important. So we'll get to this maybe in a couple of months. We had it with a couple of global clients of ours where, you know, there's been, you know, hotel groups are a really good example of this, where they've got maybe a globally controlled website.
That's right.
And a small property, or even a decent sized property over here, say in Dubai, just doesn't get priority. Right. And they're on a list with all the other requests made by other hotels around the world. And so they're saying the average change time for a small kind of edit is 3 months. And you're just like, we're living in a digital age. This is scary stuff. But the point is, you know, today, if you wanted to launch maybe a complex campaign with data collection, you know, to feed your kind of sales funnel, there's really kind of good options available, right, Andrew?
No, I think now you got, like, I mean, the big ones out there, kind of Unbounce, Instapage, where you can build out not only just some landing pages, but they also have some funnel capabilities on there as well. You know, kind of to kind of pull through. And look, HubSpot pops up on this again as well. So HubSpot has that facility to build out these landing pages. I think, like you said, it's change of responsibility. I'd say that's what it is. As aside from removal of IT, it's change of responsibility. So, you know, the smarter organizations now are kind of having the IT guys involved in more data custodians, you know, kind of access levels, security, you know, where there is expertise that's required, right? Versus, you know, from a kind of creative and marketing arm, you know, you shouldn't really be involving non-creative people, right?
Do you know what I love about that, though? It's you're streamlining accountability now, right? Because marketing campaign fails, you can't necessarily go back to and say, IT built a rubbish. These guys didn't do a good job on this. These guys didn't, you know, like, okay, look, you can do this yourself in 20 minutes. You know, and you can make edits so that you don't launch something, you know, and have to just sit back and wait. You can change things on the fly. It's just changes the whole dynamic, right?
I think the interesting thing would be is how a newer kind of disruptive organization would manage that kind of regionalization of web presence, because still global organizations, you know, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, client of ours have a new website and they're not going to localize it here for another 14 months. 14 months. I mean, that is an insane amount of time in a digital space, as we know. So, you know, and it is wildly frustrating when people don't have an element of control. So even, you know, it doesn't have to have everything. But I think it'd be interesting how perhaps some of the newer companies that are out there, you know, and kind of building their global presence, how they manage that, right? And how they kind of give some element of control over to localized activity.
Yeah, correct. Data collection, Andrew. So data collection, I think let's kind of merge some of these, because if we, you know, if we look at it from a data perspective, any data that's being collected internally needs to be managed from a kind of content management perspective. And then there's potentially automation on the back of it, right? Exactly. So I kind of run a campaign, I collect some data, and then I need to kind of do something with that data, right? Whether it's automating the handover to sales, or is it just emailing them to say thank you for, you know, sharing.
Exactly.
Tools that come to mind here?
Yeah, I mean, look, naturally, it's kind of that CRM space, right? Where so contact management and kind of collection of that data and analysis of that data. So I think we've got to say HubSpot again. But there's some other ones out there, you know, kind of like Marketo, Salesforce. Dynamics still gets mentioned from a kind of CRM perspective as well, because obviously, you know, Microsoft being the powerhouse that they are. So I think these are the ones that are kind of are out there. Eloqua as well when it comes to kind of that marketing automation piece. Pandadoc with kind of Salesforce and their, you know, marketing automation component as well. So yeah, I mean, these are tools. I'd say these are the kind of big players in that space. Interestingly, HubSpot is the only one that caters for, you know, as we mentioned, you know, a one-person band, as it were, or a multinational enterprise layer client. You know, from that kind of their CRM is free all the way up to there. So I think, yeah, those are some of the ones. And you've got some other kind of edge players, you know, like the Freshworks and even the Mondays.com. So we're going to talk about them in the project space, but they've also kind of creeping into that CRM space as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's one to look at as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think just before we move on to the collaboration piece, I think within marketing now, we've got to look at video. And it was, again, a few years ago, you say video, someone else will say YouTube, and that'll be the end of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that now.
No.
And again, it's one of those tools or products or technology pieces, I guess is a better term for it, that people just don't know the alternatives.
No.
And I think we've got a couple that we've used extensively. And the first one of these is Wistia. Which is a really cool tool in terms of allowing you to host videos, track engagement, see who's watching them. You can embed those videos anywhere, but the main kind of reason you use this is it just allows you to really kind of understand on an individual level who's engaging with your video, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that Andrew has watched, you know, 57 seconds of this, you know, 2-minute video.
Yeah.
And I can see the points that he drops off at and try to understand why, right?
Exactly.
And then I think a similar tool, which I think we'll probably talk about from a sales perspective, is Vidyard as well. Do you mention that quickly?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think obviously again from that video piece, video is not only being used by a way to communicate marketing messages, product run-throughs, demonstrations, testimonials, whatever, but video is being increasingly used in that sales space, you know, as far as first point of contact, so sending a video email instead of a traditional email, follow-up process, so taking someone through a proposal, you know, sharing screens, etc. So all of that is kind of there as well.
Yeah. And we'll go into video in a bit more detail, but I think the important point here with this part is YouTube just has some very kind of obvious limitations, and Vimeo is very similar in that sense. It allows you to do a bit more. Yeah. But there's still limitations to that product from a sales perspective and from a marketing reporting perspective.
Yeah, I think I think what's changed in that video space is also the affordability. So previously, if you know we'd spoken to somebody about. So I'd say affordability and technology. So previously, if we were running video on a website, it would be a nightmare, right? So you wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't render properly. You know, it would kind of suck up a lot of bandwidth, slow the site down. And obviously, you know, the optimization and technology piece has kicked in, but now obviously it's just so affordable as well. So to host these videos, back in the day, you'd have a media server and crazy things like this, right? It was insane money. But now obviously you've got that transition. And for a while, YouTube kind of covered that gap, but obviously the challenge with YouTube, unless you want to pay for it, is as soon as the YouTube video finishes, you'd see your competitors' video populate as far as watch next. So yeah, a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Cool. So look, I think those tools are definitely worth kind of exploring further, guys, especially if you are you know, in the habit of sort of creating videos. Collaboration, Andrew, I think this is you know, we've kind of moved to that operational piece. What's your kind of, I mean, you mentioned Monday.com as one that's a really kind of interesting tool from that perspective. Any kind of, you know, firstly, I think what are these tools and any others that kind of come to mind?
Yeah, I think interestingly, so collaboration, not only from almost like, project management perspective, but also kind of internal collaboration as well. I'd say one of the things that actually isn't on there, but probably is worth mentioning, is you know, we've got, when we look at things like HubSpot tasks, So that is a collaborative tool as well. We can tag team members in, you can kind of associate tasks, you can automate those tasks to everyone. So I think that is something that I think is good to look at. We obviously internally use a ClickUp. So that's obviously got a lot of traction, let's say, out there recently. It seems to be quite popular as well. Seems to increase in popularity. Then you've also got the likes of Asana, who ultimately bought Trello. So a lot of people using Trello on the app. That kind of board environment was quite nice, and now Asana have bought that. There is another one, and I couldn't remember the name of it, which Marketif is what you use. Notion. So there's another one called Notion that I think is interesting as well to take a look at. Again, highly collaborative environment. Build out project plans, mind maps, websites, mini websites, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of very cool. Yeah.
The good thing with most of these is that obviously you can connect your clients to them as well. Right? So especially in that B2B space. So if you are, you just want to kind of streamline that communication, you want to almost be able to share live updates or progress reports and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
These tools really kind of make it easy now just to add, clients in it. And you might not want to share everything with clients, exactly. Internal comms. So what they see is what you want them to see as well, which I think is very powerful. And again, saves time, right? You don't have to, don't have account managers or people having to kind of, update a client every 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then sales, I think we should move into sales, because I think this is obviously, I think in the subject line of this, we said, how do people kind of sell faster?
Yeah.
Right. And I think we hear that all the time where, it's weird. People are almost like, my sales cycle is 3 months. And then one question I think that always throws me is like, well, what if we can change that to 2 months?
Yeah.
What's the impact on your business?
Yeah.
We've kind of done this for this long. And I was like, okay, what's the process? And then you start to see again, those inefficiencies in that process, where actually you could definitely remove that part, get notifications on that part. So which kind of sales tools come to mind when we, really to increase that sales efficiency process that potentially speeds up how fast people close deals?
Yeah, I mean, frighteningly, CRM is at the top. Ordinarily, I don't think I should say that you need a CRM to run a successful sales organization, but there's still a whole host of companies out there that have Post-it notes, bits of paper, Excel sheets to kind of manage and track. I think, we were at our event yesterday. We had a speaker, David, who was talking about how he's improved the sales efficiency just from the reporting perspective. So something that, previously would take the best part of 3-4 hours to do now takes 30, and 4 people now takes, 30 minutes, one person, just to kind of, pull out data. So I think when it comes to, that data piece is important, because ultimately you can start to, make some decisions based on data. So if it is 3 months to close a deal, for example, okay, cool, let's track that and let's understand why it's 3 months. Is there a kind of holding pattern that people get put in? Are clients and prospects being contacted, etc. So I think with that CRM, that allows us to kind of pull in that. And then you've got as we mentioned, we've got the HubSpot, Salesforce, Dynamics, and then some of the kind of Basecamp and some of the lower end ones that are kind of fighting. I mean, I think that stat that was pulled out the other week, where there's over 3,500 CRMs to choose from now, which is a challenge, obviously. But when you've got an organization like HubSpot that basically has a free usage, but has enterprise layer features in that, I think there's a great chance to just play around with it, right, and kind of see what happens, right?
That's a good point, actually. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they said, look, we're not ready to dive in for any kind of paid version of HubSpot. So I was like, fine. Yeah. I was like, oh, what about CRM? Well, we don't really have any sales opportunities at the moment. So I was like, okay, cool. But you've got a website. Yeah, that's being launched on Tuesday. I was like, very simply, place the HubSpot tracking code on your website and forget about it.
Exactly.
Forget it's even there.
Yeah.
Right. When you are ready, you're going to basically pull up maybe a year or 2 years worth of data. That will just blow your mind. And, it's as simple as that. I mean, so again, no cost, no time.
That's it.
But when you are ready to flick the switch, you've now got access to, starting from scratch. What about for things like proposals and stuff, Andrew? Because we're massively strong. I mean, I've just signed a contract yesterday again for our Pandadoc.
Yeah.
Right. So But tools like Pandadoc, what role do these play?
I'd say Pandadoc, especially for us and other organizations, helps increase efficiency. It also helps with consistency. So, when you have a templated environment that at least allows you to kind of pull in all of the strengths that you have as an organization, and by just changing certain content fields and updating certain elements, you can present, a kind of robust proposal, and then also that trackability. So you not only can produce a proposal, share it however you wish to share it, but then you also have the ability to track activity on that proposal, and things like Pandadoc and Prosperify is another one that's out there. You can now kind of accept payments, so digital payments within, like through Stripe, within the proposal. You can attach a contract, so have a digitally signed contract in that space as well. So I think there's just it's far beyond just a Word document now, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, but we kind of got to move past that, right?
Yeah,
basically.
No, and I think again, cloud-based, you're not going to lose documents, you're not going to lose proposals. I mean, all of those things really come into play here as well. You mentioned about digital contracts. What about things like DocuSign? Still valid, I guess, because there's still, I think, large corporations that have adopted digital contracts, which they previously hadn't, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. I think what COVID did is it pushed that. So that kind of digital signage piece, we saw it across the board here. I think that in the US, this wasn't something new, obviously, but kind of in certain parts of, I'd say, Middle East Asia, this is something that was there, So I mean, yeah, really, it's I think it just speeds up the process. Now you've got the ability to still collaborate on that document and kind of see how that rolls through. Most of the larger organizations that we deal with have that digital environment anyway, because they've kind of gone paperless, right? So as part of their kind of CSR efforts and something on paperless, the larger organizations. But I think what we saw during COVID was other organizations being able to adopt these things like DocuSign and VeriSign and these other kind of digital documents, agreements. Sorry.
We touched upon Vidyard earlier. What role does Vidyard play from a kind of sales perspective, rather than just the marketing piece that we spoke about?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing really with email is that someone's open email, but you don't know if they've read it. And I think where we've been able to leverage Vidyard for clients and for ourselves is making sure that people actually get that message. Because most people don't realize that you can track it. So the amount of conversations I have where I watched a video, I know 100% they haven't watched a video because I can see they've watched 6% of it. So I think it just arms the sales professional with more knowledge again, and the ability to also explain things. So, especially when it comes to a proposal, it can be quite laborious to have a 20-page proposal that you share with a client and then another 2 pages of explanation around that proposal, as opposed to a 45-second run through, right? And then also it's a more natural environment to look back on things. So by that I mean when you're recording a video and you're talking through things, you can reference, okay, in the meeting I spoke about this. You can't type that. Right, it's kind of it's difficult. It's not natural. So Vidyard is used, kind of post-meeting follow-up, initial contact in some spaces as well, where people want to outreach and people want to see a face and kind of put a name to them. And I think because we've really transitioned into that Zoom space and team space, as we've spoken about, people are just more naturally used to seeing people now. I mean, I genuinely can't remember the last time I had a local cell call with an opportunity or a client, right? It's always, let's book in a Zoom, right? But I mean, when was the last time you picked up the phone and rang someone, right? Even us, right? You and I, we will ring each other, but last 2 nights ago, you rang me, I said, let's jump on a Zoom, right? So we can do that,
No, true. I think we'll wrap up. We've got two small sections, but I think the first one, which I kind of snuck in here a little bit, was the finance and accounting piece.
Video tools was, sorry, someone's just asked. Vidyard.
Yeah, Vidyard, so VID yard.
Yeah, Vidyard, yeah.
And in terms of the finance and accounting side of it, I think this is something, again, I'm just having more and more conversations where people are not linking or connecting all the dots, right, between the different things that are happening inside of a business with finance. And again, we've got tools now which connect and integrate with things like QuickBooks, Stripe, and PayPal have always been very good at being able to, again, connect a contract with a payment link. Right? So again, instead of, okay, here's a contract, I'll send you an invoice, and then when you get the invoice and get a chance to pay, please try and pay it. Whereas now,
fully integrated.
Yeah, here's a proposal, here's your contract. As soon as you sign that contract, the payment link comes for Stripe or PayPal. You click on that, and then all of that information goes straight into QuickBooks, right? And again, how much time have you saved? How much? All of it, right? It just makes it so efficient in terms
frictionless,
of process.
Right? We always talk about that. It's just completely frictionless.
So again, I think it's just using kind of tools like that that's available and taking advantage of those. And then I think the last piece, which I think is obviously really important, is that kind of business intelligence piece. So, where do we go from reporting and analytics? And again, there's lots of different types of reporting and analytics. I think we spoke about what data matters, I think, in one of our previous shows.
That's right.
Back maybe. And really, it's like you can get lost in data. So really kind of pick out the data that's sort of customized for you, right?
Exactly. I think that's a key point there, mate. Important to you.
Yeah.
Not what other people, you should do this, you should do this. What matters for your business.
Yeah. Thanks, man. So for example, we have company owners that we speak to, or guys who are running big businesses, saying, I spend time on Google Analytics. I was like, why? I'm like, genuinely, exactly. I can't remember the last time I went on Google Analytics. It doesn't tell me what I need to know.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It tells me a whole load of vague stuff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't tell me something that's very specific to what questions I have. And again, I think you can use things like HubSpot to set up customized reporting. Google Data Studio is a better solution to Google Analytics, where you can again just create a dashboard that allows you to pick the information that's relevant to you, so that you can just one page and see everything that you need rather than trying to find it. Tableau is obviously an enterprise level reporting platform, which allows you not just to connect, find out what's going on Google or on your website, but actually you can integrate anything that's out there in terms of your different systems.
Right.
As long as there's a connection, you can connect it with Tableau, and then you can start to pull out what information is relevant to you. And again, now this could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be operations, it could be customer service, it could be all of those things. We haven't even spoken about customer service today, but HubSpot for that one. But basically, being able to sort of customize it is key. And then just a couple of kind of fun ones, I guess. Hugely important, but tools like Hotjar and Inspectlet just give you, if you care about what happens on your website, these tools are fantastic, because basically they'll capture screen recordings that are anonymous. You'll get an idea of maybe the IP location. So if this person's in, I don't know, Germany, for example, how does that German audience kind of engage with our website differently to someone who's maybe in Australia?
Exactly.
Right. And where are they clicking? What information are they reading? You can follow the mouse and see what, where they're hovering. But that can really kind of provide the kind of insights that allow you to make change. And I think a lot of that, if you get data that allows you to make change, that's huge. And Inspectlet does something very similar as well. So I think we've pretty much covered it.
I've got a very panicked individual in our organization that is telling me that he would really like to talk to me in the next couple of minutes.
Really? Okay.
So I think we've come to a nice natural end there, and that works out quite well as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, look, guys, thanks for tuning in. We are still trying to figure out time zones. So we had someone from Canada that was watching. I think it's just gone to bed now. And obviously we've got people from Europe and stuff as well. So we are still trying to kind of accommodate.
Look at that and see what we're going to do.
It's not as easy as it sounds, because we just do have audiences all over the place. So, but we do appreciate you tuning in. And if you have, like I said, any kind of questions, we do have some questions here, so we'll try and deal with those as well privately. But catch us on our podcast as well.
Yeah, listen to the podcast and also reach out to me and Amit on LinkedIn. So always give us a shout there. Excellent. Thanks, Amit.
Thank you. Thanks,
Have a good week, guys. See you
Take care.
later. Bye.
Bye-bye.